Enter your meeting. You're on.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is Bill Kane. I'm the Basalt Town Mayor, and I'm welcoming everyone to a work session of the Basalt Town Council. We have two work session items. We're going to discuss protection from wildfire and potential code amendments for the town. And then we're going to have a discussion with Chris Matera and the Basalt Chamber of Commerce. And apparently some members of the board possibly could be joining us as well. So that all winds up at 6 o'clock when we will transition into our regular meeting. So the first item up tonight is a work session on proposed amendments to the Basalt Municipal Code regarding protection from wildfire. So Susan, I think this is probably, no doubt, your item, you and Jeff Conklin, John Maley, and well, it looks like a whole team here.
So I think Jeff is going to kick out.
Before we begin, Pam, I think we should just make a record of who's in attendance at the work session, which town councilors are here in attendance at the work session.
Sure. I didn't take roll because we don't generally do that at work sessions, but I've got their names down. Do you want me to do roll? Would that be better?
No, I think you should just
that might work.
names.
Just given the virtual nature of it, that's good for us.
Sure.
To have a record of who's attending.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Bill Kane?
Here.
Gary Tenenbaum?
Here.
Hi, Gary. Bill Infante?
Here.
Hi, Bill. Glenn Drummond?
Here.
Thank you, Glenn. David Knight?
Here.
Hi, David. Elise Hoddle?
Present.
Thank you, Elise. And Ryan Slack?
Here.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, they're all present.
Great. All right, with that, Susan and Jeff, are you ready to go? You want to lead us off here?
Sure, we're going to actually lead off a little bit with Jeff, and then we're going to jump and have John Melly from the Roaring Fork Fire Authority explain why the fire protection ordinance that we have here for the work session is so important and why it's being brought to you.
Okay.
Sure, I'll start. Susan, are you going to present the PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, I was just having a little trouble getting it to share the screen. There it is, right there. So
while you're getting that ready, I'll just tee this up a little bit. There, in consultation with the fire district or the authority, there are some potential amendments to the town code related to fire prevention that we've begun discussing and are worth considering adding to the code. This is something that the Roaring Fork Fire Rescue has worked with other jurisdictions on, like Snowmass Village. And so there's a few different components to it, some that are more land use related and some are more building regulation related. Another attorney in my office, Richard Peterson Kramer, who's also on this Zoom call and has helped me out on town Basalt business and works with some of the other municipalities that we represent, has assisted on working on some code amendment language. And so I think I'll let Susan kind of walk through most of this. From the legal standpoint, we've really been making sure that the proposed code amendments find the right place within the code, strike the right balance, and are worded appropriately, and I guess also fit within the existing code, and including the international codes that are on file. So with that, Susan, I think I'll let you kind of lay the groundwork and introduce John, and we can go from there.
sure. Well, first, we had an informal committee that worked on those things that Jeff was saying. How are we going to organize the code amendments and what are they going to say? And of course, very importantly, we had the Roaring Fork Fire Authority. We had John Melly, who is the fire marshal, and Brooke Scott. And then from Carp New Hannon, we had Jeff Conklin and Richard Peterson Kramer, as Jeff indicated before. And Richard had a lot to do with helping us with writing the actual code language. And then, of course, in planning building, we had James Lynn and Rick Fout who is our building official, also work on the code amendments. And I wanted, John, just to remind us, we have 3 different slides here that we just kind of wanted to share to kind of ground us about why we're here. So with that, I'll turn it over to John. And John, you might be muted, so you might have to unmute yourself.
Hey that, Susan. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I trust you can all hear me. Just a little background, 35 years with Snowmass Village and Basalt Fire before they combined. Now we're Roaring Fork Fire Authority. And this isn't a new topic for the town of Basalt, nor is it a new topic in the realm of wildfire prevention. The very code changes that we're proposing are the same items that the Colorado State Forest Service has been preaching for at least 2 decades. It's called Firewise construction or Firewise wildfire mitigation. And we've studied this for a long time. You can maybe recall, some of you, in 2002, we had a Panorama fire. We lost 4 homes there, or at least 2 lost, 4 homes severely damaged. You've also had fires on the 100 Road fire, which is around Catherine Store, where 300 homes were threatened. And of course, recently the Lake Christine fire, where we lost 3 homes. This isn't new. We also made a presentation to the Roaring Fork, or to the Town Council of Basalt in March of 2018, where we introduced this process of them considering codes that would harden structures for new development. This is not a retroactive code. This is for new development. And we believe that through housing design, construction material choices, the use of metal roofs, screens over gutters, decks made of composite materials rather than wood, you can actually harden structures to keep them from setting ablaze in a wildfire. Nothing's 100% guaranteed, but these methods have been proven. And if you take the 100 feet around any home and you clear things like dry brush, tall grass, even mitigate wooden fences, you can certainly reduce the disaster that could potentially happen and give firefighters a chance to get in there and help defend some of these. The frustrating part is that too many communities faced with this significant wildfire risk don't really require homeowners or developers to take any of these measures. And it's really something I think that is not overly severe. It's not something that the average developer or homeowner starting from new can't implement into their design of their home. Costs are very comparable, and in some instances, some studies show that building with wildfire mitigation helps reduce your costs. It helps maintenance. It also helps the longevity of a structure. So with that, wildfires are inevitable. Even under certain extreme conditions, they're inevitable, but that doesn't mean that the destruction has to be. So we're asking that the town of Basalt join other government entities that are even bordering you, such as Eagle County, Pickens County, and yes, Snowmass Village. We just last year developed some wildfire codes that are very comparable and very similar to the ones we're proposing to you. So with that, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to present it, and your staff's been wonderful to work with. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
So this next slide is just linking back to our strategic work plan, where we specifically address pursuing new building code changes to require fire-ready solutions, which is what we're kicking off here. As mentioned by Jeff, part of this was where do all these regulations go? And so you can see that we're proposing to amend 5 different chapters of the code. So we have Exhibit A is Chapter 16, that's our zoning regulations. Exhibit B is Chapter 17, subdivision. Exhibit C is Chapter 18 Building Regulations, and that star got a little converted in my PowerPoint, but really this is the most important part of, I think, of what we are doing, addressing the hardening of structures. We are also proposing to amend Chapter 7, which is our health, sanitation, and animals. This is where we have like our wildlife protection ordinance and stuff is found in this chapter. And then in Chapter 13, municipal utilities. So I'm just gonna, one really important thing is that all areas in Basalt are defined as subject to wildlife hazards. So when we talk about wildlife hazards, we're meaning all of the town of Basalt. So when I showed, I think the pictures that I showed earlier, when you're standing in front of Whole Foods and when you're looking up from downtown, you know, these areas were subject to wildfire, and so they're the whole entire area, whether you're in Elk Run, South Side, or Willits, as well as the kind of the wildfire interface kind of area, which is kind of up the hill where it meets public land on steep slopes. So Chapter 16 zoning. In this chapter, we're just formalizing our land use referral process and how we're involving the Roaring Fork Fire Protection Authority, which in the code, we're just gonna refer to them as the fire district, fire department. And then it also mentions that the fire department is gonna use the guidelines issued by the Colorado State Forest Service. So that's one of the things they're gonna rely on giving us recommendations on zoning. Chapter 17, that's our subdivision code, very similar to Chapter 16, kind of formalizes the land use application referral process, and it's really emphasizing the need for adequate access by fire apparatus to any land use application that's going through subdivision. So the big highlight really is our changes that we're making in Chapter 18. This is where we're requiring hardening of all new buildings and all new additions. And this is the most important thing of what we're doing, again, in our regulations. It addresses fences. We're under these requirements, the 36 inches next to a structure, that material must be fire resistant. It can be a gate, it can be masonry, it can even be wood that qualifies. But I think they found in other communities that it was the fence that was like a wick that brought the fire to the structure. If you have any questions on that, John can speak to it. Also includes standards for exterior doors, your windows, your decks, your accessory structures, and kind of repeating what Jeff said earlier. What we're doing in this code is these are requirements that are in addition to the existing fire code and our international codes. So by way of example, the fire code and the international code currently address how big your addressing labels have to be, and that they have to be visible from the street. But this new addition addresses the fact that your lettering has to be on fire-resistant material, whether it's on the building or on a separate post. Considerable thought, and I think that's one area that, you know, I think we have to test, is where do these new regulations come into play? So where we ended up is if you have outbuildings that are larger than 200 square feet, like a shed, you know, you will have to comply with the requirements here. If you're you're going to Lowe's or ordering on Wayfair, you can order something that's small, that's under 200 square feet. And then there's kind of thresholds for when does a repair kick in for new roofs and for decks. So when do you have to bring the whole deck and the whole roof into compliance with this. And as a simple measure, we were trying to if you were caught by our sustainable building regulations and subject to that review, then you're going to also be subject to having that new construction meet our new fire regulations. Another kind of important piece on this is that we have a sentence in there that where HOA rules conflict with these regulations, that these regulations, because they're a health and safety issue, such a serious health and safety issue, that they will prevail. And we do have HOA covenants in the town of Basalt, by way of example, that require wood shake shingles, and these regulations will prevail over that. The Chapter 7 amendments, this is kind of where our nuisance section of the code is. This is our code area that that you have to maintain your lawn and things like that. So on here, these are regulations that we want to apply to all properties. It really addresses debris and storage of fuel on your property and how high your lawn grass can be. Another area that probably deserves a little scrutiny, because this isn't new development now, we're talking about the entire town. And then the last one, last amendment was in Chapter 13. That's our municipal utility chapter. And in here, we're addressing access to electrical and gas meters, regulators, piping. We're saying that you can't have snow and things that would impede your ability to get to those facilities. And you can have these areas behind a gate, and you can have enclosures, but you have to allow access to utility employees and not have them be impeded from doing so because of a lock or other device. So our current schedule, today's our work session on the 28th. Next Tuesday, we're taking this to the P&Z for review and recommendation. Now, not all the chapters that we're amending actually require P&Z review, but we're bringing the whole package to the P&Z. And then we have an advertised public hearing on August 11th, and then follow up with adoption and second reading on August 25th. And then I think the last thing I want to say is that there's another ordinance that you're going to be hearing on August 11 that has to do with some clarification and amendments to the fire ban ordinance, and I didn't really want to take the time to go over those here, but that you'll also see that at that meeting. So before I open it up for questions, I was trying to do that relatively quickly. I was just wondering if anyone else on our team, like Rick or Jeff or Richard, want to add any additional clarifications or additions to what I reported on. So
I'd just add hi, this is Rick. I would just add my support, and I think it's a good idea to get these enacted, and that's about all.
Thanks, Rick.
This is Jeff. Susan, I think you teed up everything well for town council, and this will be coming back. Several of the items are common sense approaches. Some of them are a little bit more technical, I think, on the building code side of things, but there'll be plenty of time for questions and comments, and be back in front of you soon, I think.
Yeah, and I was just going to open it up if there were any questions or things that you would like us to bring back more information on, or have some concerns
Susan,
about.
Susan, a quick question. Has there been sort of have we referred this to the trades and construction guys, the industry, to get their views and assessment of. I mean, these all look very sensible. I don't for a second think that anything here is not completely sensible, but it'd be interesting to know what the cost implications might be. I mean, they look low to me, you know, fireproofing fences and having hardened doors and windows makes sense, but sometimes, you know, these things, you know, add astronomically greater cost to building. I'm just kind of curious whether we have any data on incremental cost per square foot for these changes.
Well, no, I don't know. We don't have, I don't know if John maybe can, John and Rick might be able to bring us back some information on that. And, you know, mentally, I was kicking around how best to have an opportunity for people to weigh in. And so I was thinking, just like when we did the sustainable building regulations, we had a couple opportunities for people to ask, from the building trades to ask questions, and we'll try to fit that in. We were trying to do this on a pretty tight timeline, as you can see, but we'll see if we can fit something in.
Yeah, I don't feel like the extra cost is the steepest thing. I feel like just learning it and teaching it, implementing it, and policing it from now and forever, that's going to be the tough part. And the constructoids are resistant a little bit. But this one's so important after that wildfire we had. I think that they'll roll over and get on our team.
You know, I think that one of the things that is going to cost us, you know, when we're doing reviews, maybe at least initially till we know the answers to all these questions and how to best address some of these issues. You know, after a while it becomes really automatic, but at the beginning, you know, there's a lot of questions as you're rolling something out. Anything else?
I could,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Would there be any chance you guys could go, here's what our current, like, here's where we currently are for rules, here's our amendments? I think that would make it easier for everyone to digest, whether it be a builder, the average homeowner, the HOA. We go, here's where we are, here's what our proposed changes mean.
Okay, well, we'll work on that. I think only the people that are going to understand it probably are Rick and the builders. But yes, we can work on something.
Out of curiosity, is there any difference in the code between like the wildland interfaces and the rest of the town, or is it all kind of homogeneous, the changes?
It's addressed all the same. Doesn't matter if you're up on the hill or in Elk Run.
Okay, thanks.
And just quickly on that, the reason for that is there's some mapping done that showed the potential fire hazard areas within the town, and some areas are at a higher risk than others. However, everything in the town was at least a medium fire risk. So the approach is that, given that, it makes sense to apply these provisions throughout the town and not just in the very high areas, but because the whole town is really at risk, this is it's appropriate to do so.
Okay. Thanks.
What's the timeline for this, guys? When will we see this back as a code amendment ordinance?
The current schedule has August 11th and at first reading, and then the second reading on the 25th. And, you know, that's always dependent on if you're comfortable, you know, if the P&Z takes action next week, et cetera. But that's the current schedule.
Yeah, John referenced several jurisdictions that have adopted these measures. The town of Snowmass Village. Who else, John?
Well, you have Pitkin County that has building hardening in their land use regulations, as well as Eagle County. These are designed a little bit differently than theirs. We wanted to make sure that it was palatable to most people in Basalt. I'd like to remind the council, you have close to 500,000 square feet of development in the works with the new hotel coming in at the tree farm. I mean, there's a lot of development and future subdivisions, Stotts Farm, or, you know, you've got a lot of things in the pile. Yes, Snowmass Village took over a year to go through this. We met with real estate through the Aspen Realtor organization. We met with builders. We met with homeowners, and it took a little bit of buy-in, but these are virtually the same type of wildfire codes that they all agreed to. We thought that they were not over the top. And cost comparison, if you look at Headwater Economics, which is a big organization that researches these things, there's actually cost reduction in some of these. The roof, of course, in Basalt, you could still put a shake shingle roof up, and the roofing is usually the most expensive, but then once you break the whole house down with new construction, the costs even out and sometimes come in a couple grand less. So, I hope that answered your question, Bill.
Will these codes, I heard that there'll be sort of a bias in favor of metal. Will this drive conclusions towards metal roofs, or will composite shingles still be viable, or what typically will we see as roofing materials in response to them?
Absolutely, Bill. It's really not leaning towards metal at all. You can use composite shingles. It's just that it has to be a Class A type covering. And there are a lot of products out there, very, very, very nice stuff that architects really even favor.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if anything else, I know we have another item, but if there's anything else you want to know, you could send Ryan an email, and we'll try to address it when we bring it back. Does that work?
Yeah, great. So good with counselors? All right.
Oh,
sounds fine.
Gary was raising
Bill,
his hand. Bill.
one question.
Gary,
Just a quick one. I might have missed it. What are you doing with Eagle County in terms of building regulations? Because not all the development obviously is in the town of Basalt.
John?
John,
Yes.
I'm asking.
Eagle County has their own wildfire coordinator, and they follow their Eagle County wildfire reviews. They're very similar to what we're proposing here. And in some cases, they're even more restrictive to where they mandate vegetative manipulation, where we're going more for the hardening of structures rather than landscaping, although that's a part of ours, but the landscaping is more of a recommendation on our part to the town and to the developer, whereas our codes are leaning more towards hardening of the structures. But Eagle County is, in some areas, is even more restrictive than these.
Okay, thanks.
all right, Susan,
Okay.
thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So our next work session item takes us to the discussion with the Basalt Chamber, and we're pleased to have Chris Matera in attendance tonight. And this is kind of a Ryan and Chris discussion. So, hey, and thank you guys. I'm sorry, before we leave, John Maley and Rick and others, thanks very much for your work on this, and the town will benefit, no doubt. And I asked the questions about cost because it's just always a question you have. But, you know, any incremental cost that would save your house seems like a pretty smart economy. So appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So, Bill, do you want me to go ahead and kick off then?
Yep.
Great. It does look like we have a number of the board members as well from the chamber. And so we thought we would just go and do some introductions so that we could get familiar with each other. And I think really the purpose of tonight's meeting is to, introduce ourselves, But then also, Chris and I have been meeting very regularly since our arrival a little over 3 years ago, and have really, I'd say, collaborated well during that time, and have some evidence of that we wanted to share in our strategic plan. So we like to compare notes and just make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction. So we'll go through a little bit of what that is, but first maybe we could just get the chamber board members to say hi and introduce yourself, and then we can have the council members do that. So I see in the left of my screen, Peter, if you want to kick it off, and we can go from there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Bell. I'm the president and CEO of Ascendigo Autism Services, which is actually based in Carbondale, but I am a Basalt resident, and we have services throughout the valley. So we're involved in all 4 chambers, but I decided to join the Basalt Chamber because that's my hometown.
Amanda?
I'll jump in. Philip Ring.
Philip.
Been a Basalt Chamber board member for 5.5 years, I guess now, and been in the town, or lived in the Basalt area for going on 7 years. Have my own construction development consulting company, and at one time was a mentoree of the mayor.
To see you, Philip.
I did not know that. I love it.
Bettina, that's a beautiful background there. Are these items for sale, possibly?
Yes, please join us in our showroom. So, Bettina Infante, small business owner in Basalt, obviously a textile business. I have been serving on the chamber board for almost 2 years, and also I serve on the marketing committee for the chamber. So I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad we're getting a chance to meet all of you. We have new board members, and obviously you're a new council. So
yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, I look forward to when we can do it face to face, but this is what we got to do for a little while here. So
indeed, yeah.
Amanda, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, hi guys, Amanda Wagner. I own Tech Fitness. I also manage with my partners our building that we're in the Mid-Valley Health Institute building. I'm the chair of the board, and I don't know how long I've been on. Maybe Philip's been on for 5.5. I've got to be maybe 5-ish. Chris is 5. So, yeah, great. So thank you guys for taking the time to introduce yourselves and giving us the opportunity as well.
Sylvia?
Hi, I'm Sylvia Tyson. I'm the newest member of the board, and I'm a real estate broker with Slifer Smith and Frampton here in the Valley, and moved up about 2.5 years ago from Denver. So by Valley standards, I'm a newbie, but feeling pretty settled in Basalt and happy to be here.
Great. Thanks. And then John, it looks like you're the last one there.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, John Charters. I'm one of the owners and managing partner for Bristlecone Mountain Sports there in Willits. I live closer to Carbondale, and my wife owns Lulubelle in Carbondale. So we're merchants, which is a new profession for us, but we enjoy it immensely. And I have been on the chamber board for maybe 2 years. I'm not sure. I think that's right. But I'm happy to kind of link the two organizations together. I know Chris and Ryan have been doing it for some time, but everything we're doing and making decisions on should be directly correlated with what the town's doing, and vice versa, hopefully. And we'll do the right thing for our constituents.
Good seeing you, sir. You've successfully garnered a significant percentage of our gross annual income there because of my wife's predilection for Bristlecone Sports.
I hear that from everybody I meet. They'll tell me, "Oh, I love your store," and I immediately thank them for the business because I know that means they shop it. But that's why we bought it from Don and Susan Edmond, if you knew them. Started that store in 1996 there by the subway, where the old subway was, and you know, they built a great brand, a great business. So we're just happy to carry on the tradition and maybe add to it as we go. So anyway, well, thanks, Bill. We appreciate the business.
Great. Bill, you want to kick it off with the council members' introduction?
Sure. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Bill Kane. I'm the mayor of the town of Basalt for the last 3 months or so, and been here for a long time, resident of the Valley for 46 years, and did my tour of duty in Aspen for about 38 of them, so been down here for a while, and served as the town manager previously, so have some knowledge of local government. So why don't we'll just go down the line. Glenn, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Glenn Drummond, Basalt Town Council. Live across the street from Mid-Valley Health Institute of Valley Pines. And probably been in Basalt for, I think, about 8-9 years, something like that.
Great. Brian Slack?
My name's Ryan Slack. I've been on council for 2 years, I guess, 2.5. And served on P&Z before that. And now I run a property management company up and down the valley.
Thanks, Ryan. Bill Infante?
Bill, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Okay, we'll go to David Knight.
Okay, David Knight here. I live over in Elk Run. I'm a tech manager during the day, at least part of the day, and I've been in Basalt proper a little over 3 years. Joined the council in April.
Thanks, David. Elise? Elise Huttel?
Hi, I'm Elise Tuttle. I currently work for Connect One Design, which is landscape architecture and land planning as a marketing director. But I also wear many hats, and I'm currently being a site supervisor for an install. I have a background in sustainability. I worked for the City of Aspen and the Canary Initiative for 3 years, and for the City of Boulder in their sustainability department for 3 years as well. And I am happy to have joined council in April.
Great. Thanks, Elise. Bill Infante with us?
Okay, off of mute now. Bill Infante, elected to council 2 years ago with Ryan Slack and have served since then. With Bettina, I'm also a business owner in the Valley, and we've been members of the Chamber for the past 5 years and look forward to, again, enhancing and strengthening cooperation coordination between the Chamber and Council at the board level, where we, again, I think I very much welcome this first meeting between the board and the council. And so I hope that this is important of many more meetings at between the council and the board.
Great. Ryan, I think did I miss anybody?
Gary
Tenenbaum. How could I possibly? Gary.
About me? Kind of in the background. Gary Tenenbaum. I've been on the council for a long time, many, many moons. I've lived in Basalt for about 18 years. I'm the director of Picken County Open Space and Trails. And it is kind of amazing that all the years I've been on council that, you know, we get a lot of Chris. We see a lot of Chris, but we don't see the board. So we definitely do interact with the chamber, but it's nice to actually interact with the people behind the scenes at the chamber, and looking forward to our conversation.
Great. Well, thanks for the introductions there. So I'm going to see if I can successfully share my screen here. I think all of you today should have received an email. And Chris and I just worked on, along with Christy Hamrick, some just basic highlights of sort of where we are and what we think some of the strengths of each of our organizations are. And, you know, I think that where we'll start is, you know, both the town of Basalt and the chamber in the last few years have put together their own strategic plans. And I think there may have been some efforts for strategic plans done individually, but through Chris and my regular interaction and just comparing notes, I think we've got some good overlap. And certainly we're identifying 4 areas where we're overlapping currently. Each of these has a life of its own and is, either an ongoing effort or, something that has some wins we can point to already. So without necessarily going through each of these word by word, we've got the broadband initiative, and this has started with discussions really at this point. I've been in regular contact with my other government cohorts. We know that there is a need for better broadband, certainly in different parts of town. Some are served better than others. And first steps here from the town perspective are really going to be to study what options are out there. There are efforts underway, as I said, by Pitkin County doing some work to get redundancy out of the valley, because we've all experienced when lines get cut and we get isolated. But they are trying to ensure that that wouldn't slow us down, especially as it relates to emergency services. But there will certainly be more to come on this. I've been also regularly talking with the folks at Holy Cross Energy, and they are looking at deploying some fiber, not so much to get into the fiber optic business, but they are a willing partner and interested in furthering conversations and trying to be helpful in their design and deployment. And so I think, as it relates to the chamber, this is certainly a hot topic, because businesses are requesting of Chris that they, get better accesses, especially right now during COVID. We're understanding that greater need for internet service. Secondly, this notion of a business rapid response team. Chris and I just sort of both aligned on this at the beginning of our tenure here. It's something I had experience with in a previous location. And as businesses are starting up and trying to navigate the many rules that exist, whether those are local or state rules related to taxation, you name it, just getting to know the players in the town. This would be something where they have a resource and a guide to help them along. Economic recovery and resiliency. So the recovery is somewhat of a new addition related to this asterisk that's toward the bottom of the page. But the economic resiliency, really, how do we define ourselves economically? How do we move forward and not be completely reliant on one industry, such as tourism? I think, you can see what's emerging as business ideas, having RMI located here, the Aspen Ski Co, certainly a win for the town, and then also having a new health business with Stedman Clinic. So, we are starting to see some of that diversity, which really speaks well to the town. And then marketing and branding. Chris, to her great credit, was able to secure some grants. The town participated. All of town council was involved and invited to participate there as well. And we now have some destination marketing, branding, and just sort of trying to create that sense of place. And now that we have that going, now's the time where the rubber meets the road and really trying to get it out, create that new identity. And then as it relates to COVID response, the Lake Christine fire was another example where, things come up that are unexpected. And we rely on each other because questions come from businesses or they come from citizens, and there's just simply a need for cross-pollination of ideas and information dissemination. So Chris, on her front, has resources available through her various chamber networks, and then, from the town, whether it be through the state, whether it be through cooperation with our other local governments, are able to get resources, and certainly we're relying heavily on the counties right now and their public health officials to lead the charge, and we are, kind of coming along with it. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we both have different strengths, and I think when we bring those to bear, we can certainly just be better together is really the idea. So Chris, I'll stop there and just see if there was something you would like to add as well.
Mm-hmm. So I think overall, when we look at the strategic plan overlap between our two organizations, it's how do we be better together, play to our strengths. There's a lot of things that the town of Basalt can access through DOLA funding or other resources that are intended for municipalities where we can work together and help them facilitate to get to the end result, and vice versa. As the chamber, one of our advantages, particularly right now, is we don't see the boundaries, and we're not necessarily bogged down by the imaginary lines. So, you look at our workforce, there's a lot of things happening in Pitkin County, but where is that workforce actually living, and recognizing how transient we are as a valley and we are interconnected. So, we see the best successes in the Mid-Valley with public-private partnerships, and this is really an opportunity for us to do public-private nonprofit partnerships and figuring out where we can sort of supplement one another within the process to get to these overarching goals. So, whether it's tapping into government funding for broadband, and then we bring in some of the private sector partners to be part of that solution, I think you can see future versions of the success from Basalt Vista, where you brought in 4 different entities to solve a really big problem. And this is our hope moving forward of where do we take that alignment and get to that next step and make town better for everyone. And recognizing that we have a lot of the same goals in mind in terms of a sustainable economy, and not necessarily just from a green sense, but from a, the most simple way I've been putting it is, how can you have your kids grow up here, leave, maybe get an education and come back and have a living, make a life here, and have that future that you had, and not necessarily be priced out of the market or may not have the job opportunities available to them. So, we just wanted to everyone get to know each other, understand that we've worked together. We actually started 2 weeks apart, and a lot of where our organizations have been pacing for the last 3 years have pretty much been in tandem. And Ryan and I meet bi-weekly, so we do touch base rather regularly on what's happening and where do we need to shift, or how do we play with the different counties or the regional partners.
So with that, that's kind of a summary of where we are, and if there are, questions or thoughts, we'd be happy to hear those or field those.
Well, thanks, you guys. I'd like to just echo what Gary had mentioned earlier, just about how long it's taken for all of us to get together. We know that we're on the same page, but we appreciate you all including us in this session, and we look forward to a nice strategic partnership that's in alignment, that we can work together on, that isn't just Chris and Ryan, but all of us together doing the work. So thank you very much for that.
Great. I would like to pose a question maybe to all of us, and that is that, we've had help with PPP. We've got, unemployment coverage with the $600 supplement, which we all know is about to end on Friday. There's one version that says it will go to $200, or others that say maybe not at all. I mean, there are all sorts of things that you could speculate about. I guess, maybe a discussion topic is, you know, what is the relative health? I mean, I think we've all worked on task forces. I know on our retail group, you know, we have individual retailers who are hitting very long balls. I mean, they've done very well in this kind of highly interesting and sort of segmented economy right now. And then there's some others that have been left behind. And I guess my question to our chamber partners would be, you know, are there things that we have overlooked from the town level? Are there levers that we can pull as sort of municipal representatives and officials to help this community out, both from a retail, restaurant? You know, we've kind of segmented it, but it's all business. And, you know, I think we've had a pretty nice spurt of activity, sometimes good, maybe sometimes just a little too much. But anyway, we've had quite a spurt of activity this summer. You know, it's going to come to an end. And, you know, sooner or later, we're going to face the fall and the winter. I mean, are there things we can be doing to prepare and help out and sort of be a more visible presence and sort of partner for the business community? That was only a 5-minute question, but.
I have thoughts, but I would love to hear the other board members jump in if they'd like.
Well, I think it starts with this conversation here, just being in the same virtual room together. But it's a good question in terms of, you know, in both of our missions and guiding principles, right? It's all about sustainability and community. And how do we continue to grow that? And I think that's probably the biggest question. I mean, Chris is working on some things already, but that is a big question. I don't have the specific answers for that. If Chris, you want to throw out your ideas there, or if one of the other board members wants to jump in.
Yeah, John unmuted. So
let me just jump in. I mean, I think first off, the Basalt Bucks, you know, is a great program, and you know, it's out there. It's stimulating business for businesses. Obviously, we're seeing the benefit of that. So you know, those kinds of initiatives are certainly well received, I think. Probably the most important one is, Bill, first off, it's a great question, Bill. I mean, I wish I had an answer for you. I don't, but I'm going to think about it. But what for me is, and I think this echoes on what Amanda is saying, is just make sure you're asking and keep asking. And as a chamber, I think our job now is to come back with that answer. What else can we be looking at? I know Basalt Bucks is a small thing, and not small and not inconsequential, but it's going to run out. So as you say, what happens in the fall? We're all trying to anticipate, you know, what's it going to be. None of us know. We know what spring and summer were like, and we can kind of look back and say, why did it happen the way it happened? And logically, it makes sense. But if you were asking me to forecast what I could see coming on in the winter, I don't know. And what if there's no ski season? I saw, you know, Jeff Hanley's, Kaplan's email out today. I think I read it. You know, basically, you know, they're doing everything they can to have a ski season. But what if there isn't a ski season? You know, and how does that impact businesses, you know, throughout the valley? And you know, the guys I feel the worst for are the restaurants. When the weather gets cold, you know, what are they going to do? And I'm really worried about them. I have friends that own restaurants. You know, Free Range and the new one at Ocean. These are personal friends of mine, and I'm very worried about them. I mean, I think as a retail businesses, you know, we'll muddle through, we'll make do, but you know, I'm really worried about a post-COVID environment where we don't have any restaurants left, we don't have any bars left, and that is concerning to me, I would say, more than anything. So it's a great question. I think we owe you some answers, Bill, and the rest of the council on, as a business community, you know, what can Basalt do for us, and or what can we do together for our business constituents? Because I'm really worried. I mean, my best is, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope, you know, things continue to, you know, evolve in a way that allows everybody to stay in business. But my biggest concern is for the restaurants.
Oh.
I share John's concerns, and I won't address kind of all of the short-term response to the COVID crisis, but also want to suggest that, I mean, this is a wonderful encounter for our first engagement. It's absolutely great to see all of the faces and to begin to put names to faces. But I hope that we can use this as a platform to contemplate longer-term strategy, to talk about what it is that we need to do and want to do to cultivate and enhance our business climate addressing strategy, addressing legal regulatory environment, and talking about the kinds of individuals, businesses, enterprises that we want to attract to Basalt in order to deliver on our strategy of a knowledge and ideas-based economy. And I think, as Ryan Mahoney noted, we are beginning to diversify, which is a great reality. And I think this is also reflected in our budget figures that Christy will report on, which have been remarkably robust in Basalt when other mountain towns and other towns out of the mountains are getting hammered pretty hard. But sadly, we didn't have as much time as we had hoped, and we never would have had time to get to all the questions. I've got a bunch that I've written down, but I hope one of the outcomes will be to schedule something for the Chamber and the Council to get together sooner rather than later, particularly with budget season coming up. There will probably be budget implications of the COVID crisis that will affect the town, and by definition, that will affect the Chamber as a budget beneficiary. So talking about what your plans are, how our strategy will be implemented given what may be somewhat reduced budget, is probably a conversation that we need to have at kind of the board levels. But I'll forward these questions to Ryan Mahoney, and then maybe he can forward them as well, because they're just the standard kinds of questions that we need to answer in order to be accountable to the electorate who have entrusted us with the funds, with the use of funds. And so this is a start, and I want to thank all of the board members. My goodness, I didn't think we were going to have 7 of you. This is great. So great job, Chamber.
That's great. Maybe in the fall, maybe a half-day retreat or something with the Chamber board and kind of brainstorm kind of strong town community thinking stuff. So that's all pretty encouraging.
So I have one follow-up for you, Mayor Kane, to your question, but Ryan, I know we're over time, so I also want to be cognizant of that. But in short, I think we've done a great job of working together to react as quickly as possible. So doing, putting the concrete pegs down, expanding restaurants. I think that spirit of sort of startup mentality, being iterative and experimenting, should continue throughout this process, particularly through the winter. I think we also need to look ahead, not just to what if there is no winter season, but the longer term effects for kind of the second, third, fourth wave and ripple effect of things that are happening. So if businesses were to leave, what does that look like? If there's a lot of vacancies in town, one thing we're seeing a lot of is a ton of real estate transactions. So if a whole crop of second homeowners come in and buy up the rest of the market, what does that do for workforce housing? And then I think that amplifies the need for affordable housing for the workforce. So that's going to be a longer term thing we need to consider. And then in terms of regulations, if it's really expensive to start up a restaurant and you don't have the rent, what are our regulations around things like food trucks? Or what are the barriers to entry for a business so that we can still have money coming in, but maybe not have that capital investment that's always been required because people aren't in a position to do that. So I think those are the things we're going to need to look at as seeing kind of the trends catch up with where we're going. What does that look like? Where are the areas that the town can help? Is that a zoning issue? Is it code? Where can we make modifications, not on the fly, but in sort of the same way we did to help our restaurants out with that occupancy and space issue. But I agree, this is a good start to the conversation, and I would love to hear any of the councilmen's input. Feel free to email me, and I can pass along to the board as well.
All right. Well, I think, good start. It is after 6, so we should probably move on, Mayor Kane.
I would like to leave it with maybe leaving open the prospect for maybe a half-day brainstorming work session this fall when we know more about schools and ski season and sort of our prospect for the winter economy. I think it would be really good to circle back with this group and spend some time with a prepared agenda and kind of work at it and let that lead to regular meetings that would, I think, strengthen both of us. So I would leave with that thought.
I would agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, same. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
It was nice
Good
to
luck
meet
with the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thanks for having us. See you guys.
Bye.
Ladies.
So we are over our time. I will wait for Pam to come back on, or Pam is.
Present, here.
Hi. I know you're there somewhere. Thank you, Bill. Bill Kane,
Here.
Ryan Slack,
Here.
Barry Tenenbaum,
Here.
Elise Hoddle.
Present.
Thank you, David Knight,
Here.
and Glenn Drummond.
Here.
A-team is present.
Excellent. Well, our first order of business is the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes and two P&Z appointments of Bill Marin and Jim Keefe. So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, before you do that, I had a call today. I had missed comments from Tony Kronberg, and I have added those back into the minutes. Anyway, so on page 2, there's a section of her comments. I spoke with her after adding those back in. They are on the website set. I did send a set to everybody via separate email, but it was late in the day. I apologize for that. I had a rough agenda packet this week.
All right. So I guess the consent agenda motion should include a consideration for the addition of Ms. Kronberg's comments as added by Pam Schilling. So
Yeah, the minutes as amended. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
is there a motion?
Mayor, I move the town council approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, or we don't need a roll call on this, do we? I forget which one.
No.
Okay, all those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? All approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is a call to the public. This is a time on our agenda where we open the floor for public comments. Let me recite the ground rules under which we take comment from the public. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and address your comments directly to the mayor. Identify yourself by name and address when making comments. Comments should be courteous, civil, and constructive. Town council will make no decision nor take action except to direct the town manager. So with that, we'll ask Susan to open the lines and see if we have public comment for tonight's meeting.
Okay, and just as a reminder, to email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and phone number if you would like to speak. I have received one email from Tony Kronberg that she would like to make a public comment, and I don't believe we got any text. So I will place that call now.
Okay.
This is Tony speaking.
Hi, Tony. You're on Grassroots TV during the public comment time, and I don't know if you heard the mayor's comments, but you're directing your comments to him and keeping them to 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate it. Just to let everyone know, technical difficulties while I was watching the previous work sessions, there's that overlap going, and when you just
the first like 30 seconds of this meeting. I couldn't understand anything that anyone was saying because of the overlap. I did contact grassroots, and we're going to try to figure it out because it's really hard to make public comment. But anyway, I just wanted to say great summer over at the pool. Again, it's the best pool in my 50 years of teaching swimming that I think I've ever been in. The water's clean, it's clear, it's warm enough, and much kudos to Brian Vicente and to Rob, your maintenance guy, because that just does not happen by accident. Then I have two questions, and the two questions, one is, I'd like to know how to submit a request to keep the Albany pool open longer, possibly through September, maybe October, and hopefully through November. I'm not quite sure how that procedure works. The second question I have is, I am new to this Basalt Town Council, as it's a new council, and there are some questions that I've had, legal questions and how-to questions, and one question I had, I put in an email to Jeff Conklin, have not heard back from him, and I'm not quite sure how the process is, so if perhaps someone could send me an email so I know who the person is I should direct my questions to would be really helpful. And then lastly, Steamboat Springs, they just had their sales tax revenues come almost to the same line as last year because of the outdoor dining, and Basalt is just hopping with second family homeowners. When you're in the pool working out, you can see all the people using the trails over there. It's really awesome. That swinging bridge trail has been widely utilized, especially with the improvements that Mayor Kane and everyone has put forward. But I just want to say that the outdoor dining on Midland Avenue and over at Willits is just wonderful. I love sitting over there, but anyway, just kudos to everybody, and that's it.
Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Appreciate the comment.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay, and then we just double check to see if I got anybody else. Did you get anybody, Ryan?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, and so no one else reached out to make a public comment?
All right, thank you very much. We'll conclude our public comment period for the meeting. So our next order of business is mayor and council reports and comments. So the floor is open.
Bill?
Specific item. Yes, go ahead.
Can I just respond really quickly to one of the statements or questions from Tony Kronberg?
Yeah.
So as it relates to private citizens, emailing the town attorney or calling the town attorney for legal advice would not be that procedure. Obviously, the town attorney works for the council, and if they have a question, that's of a personal nature or what have you, the town attorney would not provide that legal advice. Their role is to provide that to the council. If it's something that we are able to answer as staff, we can certainly do that. So, the normal course would be to forward a question to staff, and then we can run that down for a citizen.
That's a good clarification. Thank you. So then returning to mayor and council reports and comments, Bill Infante and I talk a little bit about the Gallagher Amendment, but before we get to that, I just wanted to go around the horn here and see if council had comments before we get to that.
So I have a couple things. I'm sure you all missed me last week when I wasn't here to consume a little bit of time with kind of praise and gratitudes. But I did just want to note, I received something from the Hudson Reed folks who were planning to present Shakespeare in the Park, but have now pivoted in a masterful way and will be filming Macbeth and presenting this for the public. You can check out a trailer. It is absolutely cool. Super expression of arts and culture in the town. I also had intended to give kudos to Ryan on the Public Works team, who I saw basically doing double time on the middle school connector to downtown. So hats off to Ryan on the Public Works team. He was doing a great job. And then I circulated it to you, Bill, and sent something over to Pam. But many of you may have seen a glossy mag out of Texas named Paper City has rated Basalt the #1 Colorado mountain town.
Oh,
ahead
no
of
way.
Steamboat, Breck, Aspen, and all the others.
Well, we're doomed.
Yeah, the good news is we're #1. The bad news may be that we may see more visitors from out of state, but I suppose that could be good for business.
Wow, that's really amazing. Holy smokes.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow. Was it mainly the competence of municipal government? Was that their comment, Bill?
They said it was the good looks and charm of the newly elected mayor.
Yeah, that's. I was building up to that.
Right.
Great. Well, thanks for that comment. Any other counselors want to weigh in here? Tell us what they've seen going on in town.
I'd love to just make a quick comment.
Yeah, please.
I echo Bill's comment on the work on the middle school, elementary school trail. Thank you to Rick Stevens and all the other people that were involved in it. It's an awesome addition to the town. And then I also want to just update everyone. I don't know if everyone saw the article in Aspen Times on Sunday, but all the work RUWAPA and the inspectors are doing up at Rudai Reservoir to protect ourselves from the invasive mussel species is paying off, and I'm just happy that Basalt's a part of this, and it's an amazing thing. They've found 13 boats so far, and all the crew up there is doing a really great job, and it's just protecting an amazing asset we have in the valley.
Great. Hey, thanks, Ryan. That's thanks for your work on that too. That's obviously a key asset for our town and our economy, and it's we don't need quagga mussels up there, that's for sure. And in your future reports, if you could comment on the burgeoning lake trout fishing activity up there. We're seeing some truly scary photographs of these 30, 40-pound lake trout that are being caught up in Rudai right now. Pretty amazing.
There are some hidden monsters up there. So for all the fishermen out there watching, get up there and try to bag one.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, David Knight's got his hand up, or he's got 3 fingers up anyway.
The Cub Scout sign. No, a quick update from last week. We had the Vail board meeting, and a couple of applications came in. They were awarded half what they were asking, and I just wanted to point out, make sure, public service announcement, make sure you're locking your cars, not leaving things out on the seats. There's crimes of opportunity out there that occur, and if you can prevent them. That was kind of the takeaway, one of the big takeaways of the meeting there. The other thing I just want to say, I know a lot of us have seen the announcement last week regarding school, and as a parent of a first grader, it knocked the wind out of me and my wife and everybody we know. But we understand kind of how that decision was made and why it was made. The COVID-19 risk levels up. It's the facts on the ground kind of support that decision, I believe. The unenviable choices, though, on the part of the school district and the board and the superintendent there. It's fiendish, once in a lifetime problem kind of stuff. So I certainly don't envy them, but I think I just want to make sure we as a town, we can figure out what we can do to be supportive and to work and partner with the school district. I talked to my son about it. I'm trying to explain, what's happening. You're going to be back in school with mom and dad at home, and he's good with that. And I think a lot of kids, who are in that situation might be good with it too. But the thing he did say is he wants to see his friends. He still wants to have that interaction with other kids. And I think that's an opportunity that, we can work with other organizations in the Mid-Valley, county governments, rec districts, our rec center, and see what we can do together to make the school year as successful as possible. I really, feel strongly that's important. So I want to ask him, Ryan and the staff, see what we can do. I know, what we're going to come up with is probably modest to an extent, but I think it's many hands make light work. There's a lot of organizations here in the Valley that
in the Mid-Valley in particular that be willing to work together with us, and let's see what we can do to make the best out of, what's a crummy situation at this point. So I will, that's all I really wanted to say, but I wanted to say that.
Great, thanks, David. Yeah, I think we're going to talk to Rob Stein a little bit here and maybe think about creative ways in which we can engage our facilities and rec programs to try to fill some voids this fall until we get classrooms fired back up again. So, that's a huge issue. It's this sort of number one I've heard in town, and it's the greatest source of anxiety for folks. So, appreciate you bringing it up. Gary, I think, may have wanted a comment. I don't have him on my screen, and I don't know why.
There's Gary and Elise wanted to speak.
Gary, yes, I got him. It came on. It was like, maybe the camera is having a hard time with your face, Gary. I don't know. Maybe
I already broke one iPad's camera, so maybe I'll break this one too. Well, and I echo some of what David was saying on the school thing, and I just, I look at it, this is just the situation that we're dealt with, and it'll be interesting to get an update from Rob. But I hope as a town we can stay united as a town and not try to get into some of the division that might be happening in other communities about this decision. And so I'm hopeful that, because in the end, it's the kids, it's not the parents, it's the kids who are the ones who could really be, this could really be a big, huge detriment to them. So I'm just hoping as a town that we can work and find ways to have some, interaction between the kids. And I know Brian Vicente's already been talking to Jeff Gatlin and others, but I think as a community, we could really come together and do some really cool outdoor, socially distanced activities, and especially through September 21st when the weather's still good. So I'm hopeful on that, and I'll reiterate that when I say it to Rob.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And, Ryan Mahoney and I talked today too. Maybe we investigate keeping the pool open later, doing, extending summer camps, whatever we can do to fill voids. We'll look at the calendar and see if there are holes in the video instruction schedule to get kids outside and, in more constructive space. So,
okay. Well, and I have one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to continue to have potentially Ryan follow up with Eagle County on Frying Pan Road. The amount of people going up Frying Pan Road has been enormous this year, and it is not safe for bikes. I mean, I told you guys, I think about my experience on Frying Pan that resulted into an accident with cars, and Eagle County, I sent them an email and they said they were going to do things. I haven't heard any follow-up on it, but I think as a community, that is a huge asset for the town to have that beautiful of a road to be able to bike up. And it's just, the speeds of the cars, the trailers that are going up there, the amount of use that's happening. I just would love if you guys all agree to have Ryan just follow up with Eagle County to see if they're, what are they doing with improving signage? And is the sheriff actually, patrolling more? I've been up there twice this weekend. I didn't see anything. I just saw a lot of bikes and a lot of cars, and I saw a lot of crazy passing. And just before somebody really gets hurt or killed, I just would love, because I don't think this use is going away, the trailheads. I mean, from our perspective, just to give you guys some background of what's happening on our trails, we're seeing use increase from last year between 35 and 55% at all trails. Even trails like East Sopers Creek Road, like that trail, usually has 2 cars, it's got 5 to 10. And so, Albany Kittle's use is up almost 40% this year. And, the Route I trails up by where you go to the boat ramp, you see 10 cars along the road there. And so people are here, people have traveled here, and locals are using the trails too, which is great. But it's just a lot of people and a lot of driving and a lot of cars, and biking has to be, one of those things that we should prioritize. So anyway, I just would love, if you guys are good with that, to have Brian follow up instead of me just alone trying to just keep following up with Eagle County.
Yeah. Hey, Gary, can I ask you a question about that? It's been a couple of years. I mean, quite a couple of years. But at one point, I thought Eagle County had initiated a feasibility study for a separate trail in the Frying Pan. Now, I would be the first to acknowledge how difficult this will be. But there are remnants of an old stage road that are intermittent along the Frying Pan. Has that ever gone anywhere, that analysis? I mean, it was sort of maybe use the road for some difficult segments and then cross, and, it may be a complete fantasy, but I never saw it come to a conclusion. There was never a definitive finding.
So I can give you an update. I mean, the Hagerman Pass Road was really not a alternative road bike road. It was going to be, just kind of a trail. And a lot of sections are still usable. Yeah. Eagle County was not interested in really pursuing, all the remnants that people contest. And so, but it was never going to be the alternative for the road bikes on the road.
Right.
So it was never going to be that. It was going to be, mountain bikes and hiking and stuff like that. And, I think Mid-Valley Trails is still has that on their list of would love to continue. And they really want to make that happen. And so it would take Eagle County legally to assert some right-of-way in some areas. But a lot of sections are still there, and you can still use a lot of sections. And so it's a great asset, but it's not an alternative to using the Frying Pan Road.
It won't change the bike and car conflict on the road very much.
Well, I think we need more signage, and we need more patrol, and we need, better education of the drivers that are going up there. And I do believe, I know Eagle County doesn't have much patrol up here, but even that day, they couldn't even send a deputy for the accident. It was Colorado State Patrol. And so it's just that I would just love us as a council to be, just stronger with Eagle County to protect, because it's a great asset to the town. Tons of people park in town, bike up, bike down, eat lunch, or eat breakfast before. I just think it's a boost to continue that. And what I've seen this summer really worries me.
Yeah, likewise. Is that it, Gary?
Thank
you. Okay. Anyone else? Council comments?
Elise has her hand up.
Can you not see me, Bill?
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't have, for some reason, I can't get everybody on my screen tonight. Let me just try it again. Yeah.
All right. Well, may I speak in the meantime?
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I just wanted to give a shout out to Ka. I went to the latest drive-in film, The Monterey Pops, and that was really neat, even though it was kind of a rainy evening. But we still sat in the back of the pickup truck with candy and popcorn, and that was fun, especially for something different. And I also sat at Tempranillo on the deck and listened to the buskers on a Wednesday night. So really awesome to have those opportunities, sort of the adult equivalent of David and Gary's suggestions for children. And I also wanted to just give you a heads up that on the August 11th agenda for CC4CA, Colorado Communities for Climate Action, mouthful, they have a new policy statement. They review their policy statement every year, annually, with the board and make some small changes. And they're not huge, but just a heads up that we'll be asking you to review that and sign off on it. And then last but not least, I had the annual retreat for the Community Office for Resource Efficiency. And they are facing some new challenges with their funding sources. So historically, they've been funded by REMP in Aspen, the city of Aspen, and the county attorneys, like for Pitkin County, have for some reason been reviewing the fine language there and decided that all of that REMP money must be spent in Pitkin County. And of course, since we're split between Pitkin and Eagle, and a good portion of the town will no longer benefit from any of the core rebates or grants, which is really unfortunate, until they can find another funding source that doesn't limit them only to Eagle County. So they are currently reviewing other options, looking at maybe some fee-for-service consulting type work. And another ramification for us is we've had the pleasure of having Marty Treadway from CORE on the green team, and he is an amazing addition, and that may be something that we either would need to find a way to fund, or he possibly may have to step away in favor of other obligations. So another little heads up there. So that's evolving. We don't know what the end will look like yet, but I just wanted everyone to be aware.
Oh, that's good info. Anyone else? Council comments? In the interest of time, I will, Bill, you can fill in any holes that I leave here. We put on the agenda discussion of the Gallagher Amendment, and I won't go into the entrails of Gallagher. Basically, in short, Gallagher was adopted by the state by the constitutional amendment back in the 70s, and it provided a cap of real property tax was capped. The portion derivable from residential properties were limited to 45%. And so this has generated multiple complications. We've had to change the assessment rate many times. We were at a 20% assessment rate back in the 70s. We're now down to 7. And you start running out of room here in terms of generating a fair tax base from residential properties. So the state legislature, in a strong bipartisan move, have referred the question of repeal of Gallagher to the voters. It'll be on the November ballot. Bill, you probably want to take it from here. So there's been a request from Northwest COG to get our community, I guess, along with others, to support some kind of advocacy to encourage the public to vote for the repeal of Gallagher. So, Bill, you want to roll with it from there?
That is about where it stands. I spoke with John Stabney, the executive director of Northwest COG, and he had sent out the memo and email describing what Gallagher is about and what the basic issues are. Northwest COG will advocate. They will make it their lobbying agenda, and they will use it to inform and educate the public if their members request them to do that. So the request of council is that we signal our support for the repeal of Gallagher and invite Northwest COG to educate and inform the public on this. There is a coalition known as Building a Better Colorado. It's an advocacy organization. They are recruiting public input to the question of Gallagher, and depending upon which question you ask, somewhere between 60 and 70% of the public is in favor of repealing and amending Gallagher because it is fundamentally disenfranchising many rural towns and municipalities who are seeing their revenues decline as a result of the formula that Bill described, and it is fundamentally hostile to business and commerce, which provides a real disincentive to building a business in Colorado. So Northwest COG is willing to carry water for its members. We are one, and if we agree as council, we can provide them our assent to advocate. John also suggested that we take a couple other actions if we are so inclined, and he suggested that we potentially consider adopting a resolution if we want to go that far, that we simply make the poll available on our town website and invite businesses in our town, and that we encourage the Basalt Chamber, which is where the real advocacy should reside, to take this up as their lobbying agenda for 2020, informing their members and inviting them to vote in favor of a repeal.
That's great. You know, maybe Ryan or Jeff could comment on this. I was anticipating that maybe the council would give Bill Infante authorization to communicate the town's support for Gallagher repeal to Northwest COG and use our town name in whatever form they deem necessary to try to win this issue. And I don't know, that may be fraught with all sorts of legal impediments with us, you know, and especially in endorsing a ballot question. I don't even know if that's legal or where we stand with all that. So maybe Jeff, you want to comment about what the appropriate action is for us to lend our name to this effort.
Yeah, I think the council can go a couple of directions. If there's that general consensus among town council to have Northwest COG do some lobbying to support the repeal of Gallagher, I think council can give that direction. If council wants to adopt a resolution in support of or encouraging voters to vote and to repeal that, that's something that could potentially come back to council. Gallagher does have an effect on, I guess, in general, on property tax revenue. It's less acute of an issue for the town, but just as another data point for council's consideration, it's the interplay of Gallagher and Tabor that really have an effect on particularly special districts that really rely on a property, residential property tax base. When combined with the two of them, because residential property tax revenues have to stay at this 45% level, there's a reduced assessment ratio applied to property taxes to keep it that way. So it'll result in lower revenues over time. However, there's not the ability for the district to then increase its mill levy to kind of retain the revenue at the prior year's level. And so as a result, you end up with this ratcheting down effect on revenues on these residential property reliant districts like fire districts. So you've seen a recent trend really within the last election cycle, and I've seen and helped with a couple of questions that are going to be on this election cycle in the event the Gallagher Amendment or repeal fails, but basically to de-Gallagherize your property tax question. So in any case, I think there's a few, circling back to what action can town council take, I think there's a few different paths the town could take. And at this stage, it might just getting a sense for town council's feeling on whether they'd like for Northwest COG to be kind of advocating in that direction would be appropriate. And I think we could kind of come back at a future meeting to discuss anything else.
I would think that, staff hasn't had an opportunity to take a look at the implications for us from a budget perspective. And so you guys should just know that information as you're kind of going into this, so you could understand what it means for us locally, as, certainly the residential property tax piece, brings quite a bit of revenue for us. So we'd be happy to just look at that and bring that back to you at a future meeting. My guess is there's still time. I'm guessing that Northwest COG wasn't trying to put this out now, 3 months before the election or so. Do you know, Bill?
I think they would like to get this done at some time at an appropriate distance ahead of the election, but it's not urgent for August 1st.
Okay. So if that's okay with council, and then maybe per Jeff's thought, we could go whichever way, whether it's a resolution or just sort of a motion to lend that support.
Elise, go ahead.
Well, I was just curious, is there an organization that is against the repeal, and what is their reasoning?
Don't know.
Do we know?
Well, I imagine that, honestly, the Bruce supporters, Doug Bruce and his group, will certainly oppose the repeal. I mean, I think anybody that's, really a hardcore fiscal conservative is probably going to suspect the motives of public sector for wanting to, repeal this provision. But it's yeah.
Opposed.
Yeah.
Because he is an author and has pride of authorship. But the way the language is currently drafted, what's happened is, as Bill said, the residential assessment rate has decreased consistently since the introduction of Gallagher, and it accelerated after the tethering to Tabor. And right now, the effective residential appraisal rate is at 7.15. Under the draft language, it will simply freeze the existing rate. It will not rise, but it will not continue to go down, which has been the phenomenon that has affected many, many Colorado municipalities in rural areas. And the reason that has occurred is because the Denver property market writ large has been red hot. And because this is a statewide set of ratios and calculations, the Denver market has driven taxation in Delta County, and that has affected Delta towns much more than it would necessarily the Aspen Valley towns, although we would be affected too.
Yeah. So, Ryan Mahoney, if I hear you right, maybe you guys come back to us and talk about the impacts of Gallagher, and then as a companion to that presentation, we consider a resolution that we can approve and then give to Bill, and he can communicate that on to Northwest COG.
Yeah, and I'll check in with CML too for, Elise was kind of asking.
Gotta be.
Colorado Municipal League would be a very good resource for us on that as well.
Yeah. Elise, you still?
Well, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm in favor of the repeal of Gallagher from a personal perspective. And I'm in favor of allowing Northwest COG to educate our population. But I don't know if I am comfortable going so far as a resolution. I feel like that maybe is overstepping the boundary of allowing people to make their own choices. If we vote on it, and everybody else is in favor, that's fine. But I'm just putting my opinion out there.
Well, we got time to think about it, so.
I guess just to be clear,
decide that tonight.
Not a resolution expressing the town of Basalt's position on Gallagher. It would be a resolution, I guess, pledging our support for the advocacy that Northwest COG would lead, if I understand Bill's suggestion correctly.
Yeah, and that could probably just be done by motion, and but the different levels that the town would like to take an advocacy approach or support other parties' advocacy approach on Gallagher repeal, I think it'd be best, as Ryan suggested, to have that discussion with some of that additional information that the finance department may be able to get. So at least the different things that you had suggested, I think those can all get wrapped up in this next round of discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think we should burn too much time on this. We got Rob Stein waiting, and we got serious stuff to talk about. So, not that this isn't serious, but I think it's not right. We'll wait till we get a staff report, and then we'll consider out what our best action will be. But thanks for bringing it up, Bill, and I'm sure we'll end up with a direction here. So, if there are no further comments, I'd like to turn to the manager's report. And I think under that context, Ryan may be introducing Rob Stein tonight. So. Yeah,
we'll roll into that. I'll just give you a couple quick updates so we kind of stick with the timing here. But some good news. Want to just make sure I acknowledge the planning department, Susan, James, others did a lot of work trying to round up, with the help of BPAC, some artists to get out and paint the blocks that we've put out there to create the new dining spaces. So those contracts with those individual artists are being signed now, and they should start in earnest on that. It's likely this winter that those blocks will be removed as snow plowing efforts get underway and outdoor dining isn't practical. But I would suspect they will be needed again next year. So we'll store them in a safe place and make sure we kind of keep them in order for however they were schematic throughout them. But nice little development there. One thing, wanted to make sure, Gary, I know you're not riding the bus right now, but we got a street light, solar street light on the corner of Two Rivers Road and Cottonwood. And I know as a regular user of that crosswalk after dark, it could get pretty harrowing sometimes with cars. So hopefully this helps with a little visibility over in that part of the world. So when you get to ride the bus again, you might take note of that.
Thank you, Ryan. I've been
Yeah.
asking for that for a while because it is cars with the light of 7-Eleven. You cannot, cars cannot see you because they get blinded by that light.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it's all of a sudden you're just like lost. So thank you, Ryan.
Yep, you betcha. And then the last thing I'll just mention really quickly, we had a little wildfire that kicked off today, and thank you to those first responders. The fire department was up there. It was just sort of on the this side, the west side of what would turn into Arbany Kittle, under the power lines. Not totally sure of the cause, but could likely have been a spark coming off of the power lines themselves. It was limited to a very small area, about 100 square feet or so, and probably one of the only areas of open grass right there. So the humidity today helped, and those guys and gals were right on top of it. So super thankful for them, because I don't think any of us want to deal with that right now. So with that, I'd love to introduce Rob Stein, who is the superintendent of schools, and he is on. And we invited Rob to come tonight to just give us a little update on of school for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for giving me a chance to talk with you guys. It's great for us to just check in occasionally and see how we can work better together. I've really appreciated the partnership between the town and the school district over time, and that's ongoing. I'm going to just give you a sort of a very brief snapshot because there's been a lot written that you've had access to already, and then save this for any questions or conversation or feedback that you want to give me. But I do want to back up and say that last spring, our board adopted a set of guiding principles to direct our work and planning over the fall, summer and fall. The first principle was that we would prioritize public health and safety above all else. And then our second guiding principle was that we all prefer in-person learning and will return to in-person learning when it's safe to do so. So we really established the idea that we weren't going to be making the decision so much as the conditions would determine the learning model in which we would operate. And you've probably all heard a lot about sort of three models from in-person to distance learning. And of course, we were in this distance learning model all last spring, and we were hoping to go to more in-person learning. That middle model has been called hybrid, but I think of it more as just transition. You know, the more conditions allow, the more we're going to be transitioned to more and more in-person. But because of the recent spike in cases in Garfield and Eagle and concerning trends, less so in Pitkin, we, on advice from our public health partners, are going to start the year with a distance learning model, at least for the first few weeks while we monitor the conditions. One of the things that's challenging for us, as for the town of Basalt, is the multi-county jurisdiction. So we work with 3 counties, and so they all have their own philosophies and they all have their own ways of operating. But there's been a recent, very strong effort of the 3 county public health departments to work together to try to establish a common set of indicators. Eagle County has a very elegant model on their website. They have 5 key performance indicators, and they all aggregate up to 1 risk meter. And so you can actually see a sort of a thermometer style meter that creates a summary report on the risk level. And theirs is well in the red, well in the high risk level right now, which is again why we've determined that we need to start the year with distance learning. So hopefully, once the counties complete that work, then that will be easier, because it'll be easy for any family or any staff member or any student to just, look at the meter and see where we are, and therefore understand the operating conditions in schools. The other thing that we're working hard on is to improve the distance learning model that we had in effect last spring. We were all dissatisfied. This was new to all of us. Just the virus is not the only thing that's novel. This mode of learning at this scale is really unusual everywhere. And there were a lot of growing pains and learning pains. And so some of the adjustments that we're contemplating are much more what we call synchronous learning, real person, real time learning, as opposed to giving students flexibility on how they work independently, and more accountability for learning. So in the higher grades, that means like more grading, more taking attendance, more of those aspects that we think of real school. The final thing I'll just touch on is that, as you know, the environment's dynamic. And last Monday, a week ago, the governor, CDPHE, and Colorado Department of Education, CDE, jointly produced some guidance. They called it a guidance document. And there were some things that were slightly different in the guidance, or that were maybe emphasized in the guidance, that are also steering our efforts. Some of the takeaways that were unique are this increasing consensus among healthcare professionals that young children tend not to transmit the virus among themselves or to adults very much. So they're at low risk of catching and low risk of transmitting to adults. Older students, by the time they get to high school, are like adults in terms of the ways that they transmit to one another and to the adults. So one of the things that was introduced much more emphatically was the notion of cohorting, of keeping small or identified groups together over the course of the day and the week. And they actually set limits on even younger children who they didn't set group size limits on like children under 10, but they're prescribing 3 or 4 teachers or adults maximum for each cohort of students because of the higher risk of transmission from adult to adult. So many people are, for good reason, asking, if kids are at low risk, then why can't we return to school? And it's part of the community's health, the health of the staff and others. And then as kids get older, we're protecting their health as well. So I'll just pause there and see what questions or comments you have or suggestions.
Questions for Rob? Rob, this is Bill Kane. Before we go to questions, I just want to, I didn't get a chance to welcome you. I think, you have enormous support within this group tonight. It's hard to imagine anybody that is residing in a more difficult position than yourself in terms of what you're going to do from day to day. And, as Bill Clinton used to say, we feel your pain, but it's really got to be an extraordinarily tough time for you. And it's just tough for everybody with kids and trying to figure out what the future looks like here. But your crystal ball is September 21st for classroom and in-person instruction. And I presume that's, a place saver and a date, and we see where we are at that time. Or are you geared and ready to?
We're saying that we need transition time, so that's why we set ourselves a target date of the 24th of July for announcing what school would look like on August 22, because we're not going to be making these transitions on a daily basis. We're going to be doing this in slower increments. And in fact, one of the choices we want to give our board tomorrow is their meeting, is how they want to structure those transitions. They want to do it on a rolling basis. So after a couple of weeks of positive trends, then we know a week from then we can start to shift models. or do they want to do it on a month by month? And it's really just about parents and all of us want predictability, but how do you want to package that predictability? So all we know now is that we're in distance learning through the first 3 weeks of school, and then we'll continually monitor and assess, but give lots of notice before we pivot.
Are organized sports done? Is there, any hope for any of those activities, or is that, I guess, for football, third week of September, pretty much your season's done by then, so.
There's an entire separate regulatory authority called Colorado High School Athletics and Activities Association, CHASA, and they have been slow and somewhat silent on giving guidance. So we're waiting to hear what they say. And in fact, this summer they said, you're on your own. We're going to let local school districts make their own decisions for summer programming. And so we looked, again, in partnership with public health partners at what kinds of activities we could do. And we did some limited outdoor fitness building activities, but it had to be in small pods of students. They couldn't share the same equipment, a lot of hand washing and other hygiene measures. The social skill building, relational aspects of athletics, even if we can't do interscholastic sports, are so valuable that I'd be heartbroken if we couldn't find some structured ways for coaches to work with athletes. But we're still waiting to see how that plays out. And now add this wrinkle of cohorting. If we're going to be cohorting in the day and then you have an athletic team, that's a whole different cohort. And I don't think we can set our school schedules according to the football roster or the basketball roster. So it certainly complicated things when they pushed out the strong guidance about cohorting.
Yeah. Council, David, then Ryan, and then Glenn, and then Elise, and then Bill, and then Gary.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be.
Who was it? Ryan Slack? It's David is talking. So what do we want to do?
Just hold them.
Yeah, can you do a timeout? Oh, hold on, I'm not. We can't hear. So what do we have to do? Shut down again?
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. If you are the meeting host, please enter your host key followed by pound. If you are a participant, please press pound to continue. The meeting has not started. Please wait or try again later.
staff has already reached out to Jeff, Brian Pasenti, and so how can Basalt Rec, how can the town help get school to continue to do activities, especially if school sports are not going to happen, but also for the younger kids. And also, I personally would like to see us be able to do it with fee, because that would really help get lower income and Latino and others to really be able to go out and do this stuff, to try to find a way, because you have a lot of facilities, outdoor facilities. I don't think we're ready for the indoor stuff, but up until September 21st, it's going to be hopefully still pretty nice out. So I want to put it out there that we really, kind of work with staff and work with your staff to create this. I think as a community, we can come together and do this and really try to find unique ways. Doesn't have to just be sports. It could be arts and could be anything, music, you name it. Just finding a way to do this and to have these communities come after school and come together and use your facilities. Because as a town, we don't necessarily have a ton of our own facilities. Obviously, we can use the parks and stuff, but you have the facilities and the kids, and kind of coming back in a way to try to get some of that interaction that they're missing in school.
Yeah, I agree. Jeff is our Chief Operating Officer, Jeff Gatlin. He also lives in Basalt, so that's who Gary's talking about. Jeff and I have talked as well, and we're very supportive of working with Basalt on providing outdoor activities and using especially our fields and outdoor facilities. We'll just need to work through, like, what we don't want to do is be perceived as expanding programming beyond what we've said we're doing, but at the same time, if Basalt, like, we've also said that we want to follow and support our local rec department. It's also unique because you don't have as many of your own independent facilities as Carbondale and Glenwood Springs, so, but we can figure that out, whether it's an MOU or something like that, so that you're basically running programs on our grounds as Basalt programs, so that people aren't saying, well, what are you saying? You're not doing athletics, but now you're doing these other things.
No, that's promising. Other questions for Rob on the council? Brian, you want to conclude anything here?
No, I think, as I've talked to several of you about it, I think, we've got a good thing going with the school and have, accomplished a lot with them. And so, I think that, thank goodness, our relationship is in a good place. So I think we're starting from a place of strength and start to problem solve. And I do want to just make sure I set expectations for this council that the one-person recreation department cannot contain every kid that is a Basalt school kid. So I think we need to make sure we're being realistic on those expectations. But that being said, I had a conversation with Brian Pasenti today about it, and just starting to think through, hey, what programs are we able to offer? We know that we're hamstrung by transportation. That wouldn't be something that we can provide. So it's really got to be on the the fields or the facilities that exist that people can walk to or be dropped off to participate. So at any rate, it's going to be a process, no doubt, and we'll see what we can do.
Mayor, this is Susan. I just wanted to note that we lost phone service for quite a while during that conversation, so I'm not sure if there was, but probably for like 5 minutes. 6, 7 minutes. Yeah, 6, 7 minutes we lost phone contact, so the people watching Grassroots probably missed some of that, so I'm not sure if there's a way of maybe Ryan highlighting some of that and putting it on our webpage or something of what was missed.
Okay. Was there a recording?
No.
That's peachy.
Okay, well,
We'll see what we can do.
yeah, we can capture it. Well, Rob, we want to thank you for sticking with us and seeing the sausage made here at local government. And, you know, our hearts go out to you. We know you got a tough task, and, you know, we're kind of, sounds trite, but we're kind of here for you. So,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
The schools are, you know, critical to what we're all about here in our community, and you know, we're very supportive and you know, want to help. Also, a well-worn cliche: we're from the government, we're here to help. So hopefully we can do something. I mean, there are, you know, we've got this discussions going about bridging to a September 21st date, and you know, hopefully that's a transition date, and we'll have to see how this plays out, but we appreciate all you're doing for the Valley and our community, and we would love to stay in touch with you. And if there's anything that occurs to you that we could do to help fill some void or some scheduling holes, let us know. We'll put our thinking caps together. So
thank you. And Ryan and I talk occasionally. I wouldn't say frequently, but we certainly know how to pick up the phone. And again, I think it's a mutual, very positive working relationship, and there's already a strong history of, you know, a lot of creative projects that we've done jointly between the district and the town, and that will continue.
Great. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
With that, I think that may, Ryan Mahoney, does that conclude the manager's report section of our agenda for tonight?
Yes. And so we'd actually moved on. We kind of
presentation.
I mean, he was under presentation, so we should be at the TACA item now.
Okay.
I believe.
Well, all right. Well, let's move to that then. We're at the restricted funding to be transferred to new Town of Basalt bank account for TACA. So this is Ryan, and Christy's going to explain what's going on. I think Ryan Honey may have called in. I think he may be on the line as well. There he is. I can see him.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
All right, Ryan, great. Glad you're on board here. So you're welcome to join this conversation, but why don't you take it away, Ryan? Ryan Mahoney.
Sorry, am I taking it away? I missed
No,
it.
Ryan Mahoney is going to take it for us.
I think actually,
Christy, maybe.
Christy, yes.
Okay. Christy, you're on.
That's fine. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. So this is a courtesy, just according to the last resolution that was passed by council in 2019 in regards to the RETA balance, and just to give a notification and update to council on what's happening with the TACA funds and what we're looking to do. So I just shared my screen. I'm going to try to move this over so everybody could kind of see it a little better. But so this resolution 24 series 2019 is looking to transfer that, or allows us to transfer that 2018 arts RETA balance of $942,179.57. Once a couple of items have been completed. One is the bank certification that they have sufficient funds available for the art center for the construction, which there's a bank certification that's been attached to this agenda item and is included in the packet, so that's been completed. And then they also must have a building permit for the art center is another one of the requirements of the resolution. As of today, that building permit was just issued, so that that requirement has been now fulfilled. So we're looking at, we're going to create a bank account, a town bank account, that's going to be called something along the lines of TACA construction. And that's where we're going to facilitate these draws from. So when TACA makes a request of a draw,
then what we'll do is we'll look at that request and make sure it fills all of our requirements, and then we'll be able to transfer funds to TACA for assistance with the construction.
Righty.
Just one other note, I put some other information in the budget packet just to remind council about where the budget is on this item. And the original budget already included $950,000 in the budget, so there was no supplemental budget that was needed. I just wanted to note that. This is all included in the original 2020 budget. There's a couple items under the arts restricted RETA here, this $1,625,000 number, and so I highlighted on this third page here of this packet item. And the TACA RETA part, that $950,000 is right there. Then there's a developer section of that for $500,000. I want to note that the town never anticipated that number to be so high. We wanted to make sure to incorporate enough funding so that we made sure that we were not going to be non-compliant with Tabor because we passed an election the prior year, and Tabor's pretty restrictive on how much we can spend the next year with the percentages increases that are required. So we had to be really cautious about that. That's why we put more money in there to make sure we had it covered.
Okay.
Does council have any questions, or?
Is that it, Christy?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward item, unless there's questions from council's perspective.
Well, yeah, I think there may be. I think there's some anxiousness on the part of the call relative to this developer contribution, and Ryan Honey's on. Ryan, you might want to weigh in here and talk about kind of where you are and what your expectations are, and we need to know what the town's role in securing this developer contribution may be. So,
Sure. I think first off, thank you for the ongoing support. Really pleased to see the progress down on the construction site. If anyone wants to go down there for a site visit, just let me know. I'm happy to take you down there. I was down there today, and it's very exciting to see walls going up and it coming together. So happy to do that at any point. When it comes to this developer contribution, and Ryan Mahoney and Susan can speak to where they're at in the process, just been emphasizing to them, and they understand this completely, the importance of holding the developers' feet to the fire to make sure that they come up with the obligation that's in the development agreement, because anything we don't get from them, we've got to go out and raise somewhere else. So clearly understand that larger number was put in there as a placeholder to ensure that there was no issues with budgeting. But just want to emphasize that every nickel that they're let off the hook for, we have to go raise somewhere else from our community, and that's money we don't get to apply to programming or to staffing or to education, the other things that we're planning on doing in the building. So I know we have the support of staff and council for this project, and I just want to be able to put as much pressure on the developer to do their part to see this project through.
Yeah.
And I would say, I think that's precisely where we are. I believe Ryan would echo, there was never a representation to TACA that $500,000 was the number. That was
correct.
That was a far cry from.
Ryan paused.
Huh? He paused.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeez. But Glenn's still talking. What the heck is going on with our phone?
Do you need me to give you any numbers?
Just a minute, I will. Yeah, I think.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Okay, what do you have? 946?
No, 851 8197.
No, that's.
You entered 946. This meeting ID does not exist. Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
1346.
Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue. Please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 17 participants in the meeting.
Would be pleased to do what we need to do from the town to, in a friendly way, encourage the developer, with this case, I think is Mariner Group, to address this contribution in, the most appropriate way. With council consent, I'd be pleased to make a call and just, make sure that that the development group is aware how critical this is to the community, and make sure that we remind them of their obligation here. So unless there's opposition to that, I would plan to probably make that call.
I think that's a great idea, Bill, because it also caught my eye in reviewing Christie's numbers. If we are counting on 500,000 or something close to that, then a gentle nudge from the mayor might help move them to be more generous. And it also strikes me, however, that there's an obligation to pay for this stuff. So it's not a question of their generosity. They have an obligation to pay, and now frankly, we need to enforce the contract that was consummated or whatever executed with them. I also, I'm thrilled, Christy, that we're releasing this money. It looks from the budget that you're about to talk about as well that we've got a little bit more than another $150,000 accrued in the Takal Rita since 1/1/2019, so that's good news for the future. I know, Ryan, you can't draw it down yet, but it is money in the bank that hopefully will come once you get your certificate of occupancy, which is, hopefully going to come soon. I was curious about the other source of funds that we have talked about, which were residual funds due to the town from the Tree Farm underpass. If I'm not mistaken, there's another 450 or so thousand due back to the town. And I don't recall if we had ever determined if we had the flexibility to use those funds to support Takal. And if not, what are we using them for?
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, we actually received another $252,000 in the Arts Rita for 2019, so that's a real positive for the future. So that was a very good point. And then in regards to the tree farm, that 400, I think roughly 27,000. We did go back and determine where that funding came from originally, and what we needed to do with that funding. And there was some limitations put on that because a lot of that funding came out of post and also needed to be reimbursed. And so we had to be thoughtful about that. So there was, I can look up that reconciliation we completed for the 2019 audit, but there was very little amount of that was actually available general operating at the end of the day, after we did all the research on backtracking that funding to where its original source was.
Okay, I mean, probably too technical for this conversation, but since the Mariner contribution is notionally for landscaping, isn't that a park? Can't you call it a park and use the underpass funds to by grass and trees and stuff like that?
Not the town's park.
No, it is though, actually. You know, if,
Still
if- do we have the option, Christie or Bill or Jeff, to allocate the funds in that way, what is effectively a park?
So, I think that if you want to, think about using some post funds for the purpose of, you know, solely landscaping, associated aspects of their structure, that's something the town could entertain. You know, that's not a budgeted item, and certainly we have a number of expenditures that are contemplated to come out of post. Big land purchase, improvements at Albany, improvements to the CDC. And so, you know, that if council wants to rearrange some of the smaller amounts that we have remaining, that's a, you know, certainly a budget discussion that you could have. One thing related to, you know, the RETA that we have, and I've sort of rung this bell, is we need to be, we have infrastructure needs now immediately and coming up undoubtedly. Depending upon where the economy goes, that may become even that much more acute for using those. You know, our public works facility, we are now no longer in Crown Mountain, so we're now down an additional building, and so that issue is becoming more and more front and center, and taking that money from general fund is not really feasible. And so, you know, those are conversations we need to have and find, you know, where we need to prioritize and how we balance those expenditures over time. And then I would just say that, you know, council should also be aware that we have typically in the past treated both TACA and the art base on somewhat equal footing. When we fund one, we fund the other. And so, you know, that isn't a hard and fast rule, but undoubtedly there's, you know, some pressure that gets applied there that, you know, we would just want to be aware of moving forward. And so, you know, I think back to my original point on the negotiation is, you know, we are getting input from the engineers on real pricing for what it would cost to build, you know, a park. We have contributed that money to TACA, which on the part of the council was very generous, considering it was also money to be used throughout that development. It wasn't specific for that piece of land. And so, you know, this is just one of those situations where TACA needed to plug a number in, and, you know, that was in advance of, you know, our negotiation and sort of how that shakes out with the developer and what their basic obligation was to fulfill that improvement agreement condition.
All right, well, let's take this one step at a time. Why don't we, you know, basically exhaust our remedies here. We'll work through this contribution that we're going to get from Mariner. We'll circle back with Ryan Honey, and we'll see where sort of the overall building budget looks like, and kind of strategize from there. But, you know, we're sort of jumping the gun here to try to figure out exact dollars until we know what this developer contribution is going to be. And then I think we proceed from there with any other discussions.
And the budget discussions are upcoming in less than a month, I suppose, or at least to start. So this conversation will be timely.
Yeah. Any Ryan Honey or Ryan Mahoney, does that sound amenable to you?
Yep.
That's great. Yeah, no, we appreciate the support to help get that piece of it figured out, and then we can look at the next piece after that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the direction we will take relative to that. Christy, is there anything else on item 8A? You're restricted funding to be transferred. There's no action required here. This is purely informational, but it's really important informational, so thanks.
It's a lot of money, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad to give you all that information, and we're happy to move forward with that, and we'll get it going as soon as possible.
All right, good. Ryan, thank you very much.
Thank you. Come see the site.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
So 8B, financial update, the second quarter. Christy, you're still up.
Wow, so many exciting topics, so little time.
Yeah, no, just make sure this is cheery.
Yes, indeed. I'm going to share my screen once again. Talk through it, amazingly cheery financial results for such a challenging time for so many municipal governments, even school districts. I think of Stein, even looking at the potential of if this Gallagher Amendment doesn't, isn't repealed, that it could be, upwards of almost $500 million in cuts to schools for 2021, so yeah, it's just challenging times for a lot of different reasons. I just got a CML report too today. They did a survey in early July. 37% of the municipal governments responded, and they said that 17% was the average reduction anticipated in general funds for this year of revenue. So I think that's staggering as an average of a third of our municipal government. So the results that I'm going to give you now are quite good. I'm surprised and encouraged by the results for right now. However, we're obviously not out of the woods, and we need to continue the conversation. I'm grateful to council and to Ryan Mahoney for allowing a lot of conversation time on our finances this year to just make sure that we have a clear picture of where we're at right now and what that's going to look like for the future. So having said that, the other really awesome part of this report is the addition we added because of our investment policy and all the work that council did and put into that policy, and the Finance Advisory Board is now, I'm just going to kind of jump to that here, see if I can move over. Here we go. Okay, so I added over here to the right as part of the general fund. It includes all funds, but it just kind of fit here really well for our cash and investment accounts as of 6/30 of 2020. So this is where this is going to be and reside in all of our future quarterly financial reports. So you get to see what our interest rate is, annualized return for each one of our investments, and our current balance. So that you guys have that information available to you. Okay. So that one's a good one. I was glad that everybody came up with that as something to add to the policy. I think that was a good one. Okay. So when we look at the graphs that we usually put together now, that Finance Advisory Board and Council wanted to see from here forward for our general fund, percentage of general fund year-to-date revenue by source, about 52% of that is sales tax, and 23% is property tax. Now, the reason why property tax is so high this time of year is because we get most of our property tax in the spring. As we go forward through to the third quarter, the part of the pie graph for our sales tax, the blue part, will continue to increase. We're usually about a little over 60% funded through sales tax, and there's some other funding sources that are smaller. License and permit is 10% of that, and then there's all of our service charges and other is much smaller. So those are the two biggest sources by far. The other thing, I'm just going to try to very carefully. Okay, there we go. Year-to-date expenses by department. So the big ones are the the 29.5%, let's see here, where is it? I'm sorry, let's see, police 29.5%, sorry. And then administrative 23.3%. Some of these other, the planning is about 10%, legislative 7.1%. Your legislative percentage is going to continue to escalate throughout the year because we've been delaying a lot of the legislative costs in pending COVID financial information, which we've been receiving in. Public Works is 25% to date of our expenses. That number is probably going to continue to increase as we finish more of our streets construction through the rest of the summer. So anyway, going into the numbers part, which is my favorite, is to look at those dollars. If I can get that there we go. If I can get it to move over. Sorry, I got to fit a square peg in a round hole, so to speak, sometimes on this report. Okay, so one of the most positive numbers I'm going to report on our quarterlies for this quarter is the property tax number. This percentage of budget, 97.5%, is high. One of the things that we were concerned about going into this pandemic with the high unemployment rate nationally is what was going to happen to payment of property taxes. But thankfully, so far, we've really seen that the vast majority of our property taxes are not late. So that's a real positive for this year. So you'll see that number increase as our financial modeling for the next time, because that number is much higher than anticipated. We received in about a little over $500,000 from Eagle County this last month on property tax, which was higher than usual even. Specific ownership tax is lagging slightly from where we were on budget, not terrible. Sales taxes we've talked about is ahead of budget. And franchise fees that are delayed, a lot of times we get those in a month or two way after the quarter end. So part of that is a delay. Part of that is a reduction. Anticipated, let's see, is a big one. Here on the building permit fees, you can see that we're up compared to our 2019. Compared to actuals, 251 from last year versus 363,000 this year. And we've already hit our budget for our building permits. And then we just got in our TCAW building permit, as we just talked about too. So that number is going to be much higher than budget this year. So another real positive one on some of our larger items. So the other thing I'm going to note here that is going to be an in and an out more than anything. Let's see if I could find it. Recreation fees. We received there was a glitch with a new Civics Plus reporting system that we're using where there was a delay in the receipt of some funding, so we didn't know what this number was going to be, but we had a lot of contractor work around some summer camps that was received. So the majority of that is passed through to contractors, so it's not going to be kept by the town, but at least it's, just doing something to help our kids to have something to do during the summer, so that's still good news. But it's just something different than what I anticipated because for that reason. So I just want to note that. Let's see. So that's really all on the revenue side. For the general fund that I'll note, 60.6% received in year to date. And I just lined out the majority of that sales tax increases and building permit fee increases. And then also we receive in our property tax in the spring. So those are the three biggies and the reason why. The expenditures are 38.4% spent to date. Part of that is,
Christy, could I interrupt you at this point? It's kind of a critical point here. So, halfway through the year, we've received 60% of our budgeted revenue for the year. Are there timing explanations for that? Are we expecting 40% for the balance, or are we expecting 50 or 40, or what can you sort of glean from that? What's the extrapolation look like considering where we are right now? I guess, you know, there are a lot of unknowns relative to ski season and everything else, but are there some things that are just sort of front-loaded in this revenue model that would explain why we're so far ahead?
Yeah, the first one is your property tax, because we've received 97.5% of that budget to date. So that's going to be, you know, the biggest part of that increase is because of a timing difference with the receipt of property tax.
Yeah.
Beyond that, you know, it's hard to say on your building permits if they're front-loaded too. I know we've got a couple big ones still coming in with TCA, and I don't know if there's any other large ones this year. So maybe I'd have to look up to see if Stedman would be one. Or if we've received that, I just can't recall right now.
No.
But that's another potential as far as front-loaded. And the remainder of them, I mean, as far as if I have a crystal ball, and I know this is pretty dangerous to me to do without my calculator in front of me and really doing a lot of work, but we could almost, at this point, anticipate a break-even budget even with a decline in interest earnings. That's one of the negative numbers we have here. So that's good on the revenue side. We might even see a surplus in our revenues this year. So,
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. But there's lots of unknowns. We don't know yet. Obviously, with the ski season, that is an unknown, and what'll happen in the fall with multiple COVID situations. Just really wreaking different types of havoc on our economy in different ways.
Christy, real quick question. On the revenue forecast, is this the downward revised figure, or is this the original that we approved last December?
This is the original budget. That's a very, very good question. Thank you. That's the original budget. When I run the quarterlies or do estimating like that, I always try to work off of the legally approved version of the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep our fingers crossed that revenues remain robust.
Yeah, it's something that is really, we're in a bubble here, and we're real fortunate for that. Like I said, average decline on the rest of the municipal governments that CML reported was 17%. So you can look at on 7.5 million, that's like 1.5 million. That's about where we were anticipating when this thing first came through, but we really haven't seen that. So looking at expenditures, 38% spent year to date. Some of that's because we were delaying costs, and some of that is that there are some capital construction projects that are still being completed out there that haven't been spent yet. If we do come in under our expenditure budget, we're going to take that into account when we're looking at our capital improvement plan for the next year, because we have a lot of deferred maintenance, and being thoughtful around some of those one-time expenditures because of that timing difference of what we were doing to assure that we had some more information around the COVID financial impacts. Okay. It could also help us with balancing our budget next year if we see revenue shortfalls that are anticipated then, because this COVID situation, financial situation, is anticipated to last at least 3 years. So this puts us in a good financial position, though, with that. Any other questions on the general fund? So your restricted funding graph, same kind of a picture. Is sales tax, 70% of that is funded through sales tax, which is your post. And then you have your other information, or your other revenue sources. Building permits and fees is, I think, the second largest. Yeah, or no, third largest. RETA's is your second largest at 12.4%. Okay. So then, restricted funding sources, so just as similar with what I just reported on the general fund, your post-sales tax is up, just as we have been noting that our general sales tax is up. So year to date, that is, and we're running a little ahead of budget on that. Lodging tax is down below what we would anticipate, receiving 32% in, roughly, year to date. I get these reports out a little quicker to you guys now, and so sometimes some of the payments are a bit delayed in the receipt of the lodging tax, so we may get a little bit more in than that, but that's probably pretty close. Tobacco tax is running ahead of budget, which we were fairly conservative in that tobacco tax budget account anyway, looking at what the impacts to some of the other taxes that had just been layered on would be. So that's a positive. And then licenses and permits are up, just as our building permit fees are up, which would be, those usually run hand in hand. Let's see here. And we haven't spent a lot of our funding yet for the year, but you know, we have the TACA that we just talked about that's going to be coming out shortly, as well as some of the other expenditures for the post account and Basalt River Park. So those things could still occur later in the year, and those are fairly major costs. So still anticipate that we'll have much higher expenses than only 10%, because we're only showing 10% year to date. So that's because of those large ones that are still out there. So mostly. Any questions on that one?
Two quick questions, Christy. On lodging tax, not too surprising that we're running well behind budget, although from what I gather, the Element had a really good early July and is seeing significant demand, and occupancies far higher than what they were originally estimating for this period. But if lodging tax continues to get crushed, what does that mean for the amount that we'll be able to disperse to the chamber, since they get half? And then the other question on tobacco tax, since we're running so much ahead of budget, if we exceed 280, can we keep all of the overage?
Good question. So the lodging tax perspective is that, you know, this percentage of budget, whatever it turns out to actually be, they usually get 1/4 of that lodging tax, just so you're aware of the number with that. And then, so whatever that percentage of budget ends up being, that's what that is going to look like. So let's just say.
Okay, so it's not going to be too, if we keep on this trend, it's not going to be too close to the 75,000 they got last year.
Yeah, it's going to be, you know, let's just say they come in at 70% of budget or something to that effect. I'll just take that number. That would be at 52,500 versus 75. So, so there is an impact there, for sure. And then the second question on the tobacco tax is, so the history behind that is last year, because the ballot question was passed in 2018, we had to give back some of the tobacco tax because it was over what we had told the voters as far as the amount we were going to collect for Tabor. And so we had to give all that excess back. But that requirement only is instilled for the first year after the ballot question. So this year we'd be able to retain the funds so that we would be able to do some good things for our community with all the needs out there right now.
Great, that's what I thought.
And just so you know, Bill, and for the rest of council, that's one thing Rob Stein and I have been working toward, is trying to get come up with some ideas and a program within the schools around mental health, physical health, where we could put this tobacco tax to use on, the kids. And they've been going through some changes over there with regard to how they're addressing their mental health and the general services for, I guess, broad student health. And so this is something we'll bring back to the council, but I think a pretty darn good use to try to support the school's efforts, and pretty exciting because it is a good chunk of money, and so if we can kind of get to the root of issues that lead to addiction, then I think hitting that where it occurs during those critical ages is pretty paramount. So that's something we'll be bringing back to council for discussion in the near future.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then just one other note as far as we've talked about TACA is that we had collected in the RETA 156,000 year to date, June 30. So that's roughly about 78,000 would be the Willits RETA Arts edition for this year. So you guys have that information just to note it. And then our water fund is doing fairly well. Our bond redemption fund is boring, which is good. We're just paying off our debt, which is great. And our water fund is running about 45% of revenue estimated, which is not bad. We're doing pretty good on that one too. I don't have any concerns about shortfalls in that fund. We need to do some work on deferred maintenance as part of our capital improvement plans there, and really start to build that out to assure that our infrastructure is going to provide us all the water we need into the future. So,
do you guys know if we experienced significant increase in demand this summer with all the folks in town? Are we seeing, measurable, significant increase in demand?
Yeah, I can't remember what the percentage is, but it was, I want to say somewhere in the 10 to 15% increase range. And I was wondering if part of that wasn't because of the dry summer that's been going on as well with irrigation.
That's a factor, yeah.
Yeah, I think there could be a couple things going on there, but we've seen an increase in water use between years for sure. The real advantage I think too that we're working on is that I'm just going to give a shout out to Robbie and Jenny and Paul and all the water department as well, Jenny Aragon, and our finance department, because they've been working to tighten up our billing, and we found some glitches in that over time that we've been able to clean up as well, that helps us with that reporting. So.
Great.
Okay. That's all I have.
All right, thanks, Christy. Any questions of council before we move on? Hearing none, thank you very much. Good numbers, and let's keep it rolling. We're going to move to council actions, and the first is item 9A. It's public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 15, series of 2020. It's an ordinance of the town of Basalt, Colorado, approving an easement agreement with the Roaring Fork School District number RE1. Jeff Conklin, Susan Philp will take this item for us.
Okay,
Thanks.
maybe.
Susan, you want me to go? Or?
I'll start, and then maybe you piggyback. This is a public hearing. This is our second reading. We described at the last meeting that we have a 3/4-inch line that weaves to the restrooms at RVD Park and then makes its way to the pool. And Public Works looked at a lot of different alignments, and the one in the school district property was the one that was the most direct, ultimately would be the less expensive, and also would be the least disturbance to existing residents. So what you have in front of you is the easement agreement itself. Jeff Conklin negotiated the terms of the agreement with the school district, and again, it's just another example of a partnership with the school district. So this is the first of two items that affect the water line, and this water line is going to immediately be a benefit to the pool and Albany Pool, but it's part of an overall program to loop the water line through town and provide better service to the community. So we haven't received by email anyone that wants to speak, but when we're ready, we'll need to open up the public hearing. And I will just make an announcement now that if you would like to speak, please email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and phone number. So with that, there haven't been any changes to the ordinance since first reading, so we're really ready for any other council questions, and we're ready for the public hearing and council approval, hopefully.
Jeff, did you want to add anything to that?
I'll be very brief. This is, as you know, the second reading on this easement agreement. It's pretty straightforward waterline easement agreement. It's been approved by the district and ready to be approved by you guys tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions of council to staff regarding the waterline easement with the school district? Hearing none, I entertain first of all, we have to open the public hearing and make the phone lines available for public comment. So I will open the public hearing at 7:50, the record shows 7:58 p.m. So Susan, if you
got the timer on?
Work your magic there with the phones, that'd be great.
No text on my end, Susan.
What? No text?
No text.
Okay.
On my end.
Yeah, and I thought actually we'd give it a minute instead of 2 minutes this time. So I'll let you know when that wraps up. And you know, while we're waiting, the next item also will be on the Albany water line also, and James will take that as soon as this item is done. So we had over a minute and 15 minutes, and there's about a 45-second delay. So I actually think we're okay. I'll just double check that I didn't get any emails, and since Ryan didn't get any texts and I didn't get any emails, I think we're okay.
Okay, thank you. So hearing no public comment, I will close the public hearing at 8 p.m. and ask for discussion from council, a motion. What is the council's pleasure? The floor is open for questions, comment, or a motion. So,
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 15, series of 2020 on second reading.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved in second. Pam, please call the roll.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry. Thank you. Elise Hoddle?
Yes.
Thank you. David Knight?
Yes.
Dylan Fonte?
Yes.
Thank you. Glenn Drummond?
Yes.
Jerry Tenenbaum?
Yes.
Thank you. Ryan Slack?
Yes.
And Bill Kane?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move to item 9B, resolution number 27, series of 22, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, authorizing town staff to enter a contract to install a new water service line to Albany Park. So we don't know the contractor yet, or do we?
We do. Let me share the screen here just a quick second.
Kind of like Gould.
It is Gould. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so this item is a resolution that's related to the Albany Pool water line. We sent out the revised resolution to council this afternoon, and it's directing staff to enter into a contract with Gould Construction to install the new water line to the pool. The project is in this year's capital improvement plan. We had town's consulting engineer, SGM, put it out for bid pursuant to the town's procurement policy. We received 5 bids. Gould was the low bid at $123,478. The engineer's cost estimate that we had prior to the bid process was about $143,000. So the bid from Gould was well under the engineer's cost estimate. And so SGM is recommending that the town enter into a contract with Gould to do the water line because they were the lowest bid and are capable of completing the work. And with the package material that you received today, that's part of SGM's recommendation. It should be noted that there will likely be a slight change order to the contract because there was a slight adjustment to the location of the water line that was bid because we had a small conflict near the pool area. So SGM and staff have been working through that, and we think we've solved that issue. So there might be a slight change in the price, but just a couple thousand is what we're thinking. So in total, staff would recommend providing council discussion and ultimately a motion to approve the resolution to have staff enter into a contract with Gould for the water line. And staff is happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. As a resolution, are we doing a public hearing, public comment on this? What's going to be our process?
No, we don't have it.
Comment.
Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
It's not a public hearing, but do we want to open it up for public comment? Take a minute and.
You certainly can open it up and allow for public comment. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Susan, do we have to do anything special or just?
No. Well, if you want to open it up for public comment, I was just going to make a note that, we were very particular last week when we were doing the resolution for the Albany water line, that if you were going to speak during public comment, we wanted you to speak at the beginning of the meeting. So, I don't mind officially opening it up, but it's a little bit, it wouldn't be consistent with what we did last week when we didn't allow the public to speak during the park resolution.
Okay. So with that advisory note, I will ask if there's a motion to approve resolution number 27, series of 2020, for town to move forward with a contract with Gould Construction to install this new water service line.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, sir.
We don't think we're going to be like, it looks like the bid difference was 123 versus 137. We're not going to hit 137, are we?
No.
With the orders anticipated?
I'm sorry.
We're still going to be below?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mayor, I motion town council approve resolution number 27, series 2020.
Second.
Second. Okay, moved and seconded. Pam, call the roll, please.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you. Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Bill Infante,
Yes.
thank you. Bill Kane,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
and Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, our final item for this evening is discussion to extend a resolution to extend our amended public health order regarding face coverings. Ryan Mahoney, I think I'm going to ask you to tee this discussion up for us.
So as you all know, we initially put this into effect on May 1st, and this would be our third continuation of the order. A couple things, Councilor Slack had called me earlier today, and we just talked about, how this might be influenced given the new statewide mask order. And so I did, take a look at that. Just for all of your information, we cannot go less lenient than what the state would put in place, but we can go more strict. And so essentially we align with state, save for the state requires them for 10 and older, and ours is over 2 years of age, and so that's consistent with what we're seeing throughout the valley. So I would suggest we keep that in place. And then I did pose one question to Mr. Conklin earlier as it related to one excerpt in here that may have a conflict with the states. And so what that is in the exception section, C, number 3, that persons working in a professional office who do not have any face-to-face interactions with the public would be exempted. As I was reading the state, it seemed that if you're in a professional office, yes, the public might not be in, but they're really trying to protect, coworker to coworker, since you're not in the same household. And so I would just ask, Mr. Conklin for a clarification on that piece.
Sure. So this resolution went into the packet before the state's order was promulgated, and so some of the language doesn't quite line up with that. There are, I think one thing that, as Ryan mentioned, that's captured under the governor's order and the CDPHE order implementing the governor's order, it states that workers who may routinely or consistently come within 6 feet of other workers or the public are considered to be in close proximity. So that's going to apply regardless, it being a state order and more restrictive than what's in the town resolution. But one thing the town council could do to ensure consistency and there's not any confusion on that issue is to approve the resolution with an amendment that the exceptions are amended to, or at least that exception is amended to align with the state's order.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Sure.
So when we say that professional office who do not have face-to-face interactions with the public, I believe this was brought up in previous meetings, like kitchen workers. I know health code fairly well, used to work in the health industry, and like, are cooks required to wear this? Let's say they cough on a salad without a face mask on, that's obviously going to be a bad deal. Are cooks required to wear this?
So, as I understand it, the cooks, if they were able to socially distance, then they would not have to wear it. But if they were consistently within 6 feet of a coworker, then they would. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, and the 6 foot rule is kind of an overarching element of all of this. So it would still apply. And I would agree that if you cannot social distance, there's still the requirement to wear that face mask.
Because I know,
And that's even true in the office setting. And so, you could take the position that this is kind of still aligned with the state order, but for clear and consistent statements of policy and rule, I think it would make sense to amend the language to sync up with that state requirement.
I know the way the health order used to, health regulations in Pickens County, Eagle County, you have a kill stage. And so basically you can't touch anything with your bare hands. If you're a cook, that means raw vegetables, bartender, whatever. I just want to make sure we're covering that aspect of it.
Yeah, those provisions of the Eagle County and Pickens County orders are going to apply. Part of the reason for this resolution is just to kind of touch on the things that particularly concern the town that aren't addressed by those orders. So now that they do have the face mask coverings, there is some more specificity on it. But the general approach thus far has been, you can't maintain social distancing. You have to wear a mask. That's been the town approach so far through this resolution.
And then one other item to bring up is, last time staff had suggested that we keep this in place until rescinded, and council had some reservations about that. So here we are a month later, and the data is showing that the masks really are providing greater protection, and that is certainly becoming more widespread. Is there a taste to maybe not keep it in place permanently until rescinded, but extend that month out a bit, say 90 days or something along those lines?
I personally think we're dealing with this for 2 years, so.
Can we do it 90 days at a time, though, Glenn?
I'm fine with that.
We could pick the third. If council is agreeable to that, then we would do it. We can quickly look at the date. What is it? August, September, and October, like the last meeting in October date to revisit. And certainly we can rescind it beforehand if miracle happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think 90 days, it saves us 30 minutes every meeting, or at least once a month.
Yeah, so that would be October 27th if sort of the 3-month provision was added.
I just maybe anecdotally, it appears that all the preponderance of evidence now is that face coverings do work. They do reduce transmission. And there was a piece today that I read that was a pretty highly regarded scientific paper with extensive peer review that contends that a face covering now offers benefits to the wearer in terms of, initially the thinking was that it would just reduce propagation of airborne droplets through the mask. Now the findings are pointing in the direction that the severity of symptoms is directly proportional to dosage, to the amount of virus that one is exposed to, and the face masks do have an effect in reducing the potency and the volume of virus that you're exposed to with a face mask. So, I mean, with time, we talked about this 30 days ago, and I think the evidence now is even stronger than it was 30 days ago that this is really an effective measure. So it's really what we got. We got face masks and social distancing. And if we do those things, we have a good chance of, kind of reducing this spike that we're experiencing right now. So I'm certainly obviously all in favor of extending this thing 90 days at least, and we'll see where we are 90 days from now.
And I'd just like to state, like, so everybody can hear it, you know, I was not a fan of this in May, but obviously, science is science, you don't believe in it.
Yeah. So with that, given the hour, is there a motion to extend our face ordinance as amended with amendments as suggested by our counselor, and to take this to the second meeting of October of 2020?
Mayor, I move the town council approve resolution number 28, series of 2020 as amended and revisited in 91 days on October
27th.
Second meeting, the second meeting of October 27th.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Pam, you want to call the roll on this?
Sure, absolutely. Okay, let's begin with, Bill Infante.
Yes.
Thank you. Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you, Gary. Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Kane.
Yes.
Thank you. Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Thank you. David Knight.
Yes.
Thank you. And Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you all. I think unless there are other items that council would like to introduce, that calls for our meeting tonight. And I think I have reserved, I think Jeff informed me I have some kind of like almost royal prerogative here to adjourn these meetings. So unless there are any complaints, I'm going to call our council meeting adjourned.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, when are we going to get the meeting in person? I'm not sure there are any real people out there. I think that somebody could be counterfeiting some of these images. I know Ryan Slack's there though.
Well, we were gonna have a,
No in-meeting person.
What'd you say, Glenn?
I would be very disappointed if, like, we serve 4 years and we don't ever get to meet in person.
well,
Gotta keep the.
we were
I
good.
haven't seen that far.
We were
You can
working.
share it forever.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say that we were working on a joint P&Z and Town Council work session that we were thinking of having on August 21st at like Albany Park, and clear out the picnic tables and put some
that's great.
chairs. So, you know,
We could all have. We could use bullhorns and kind of
Yeah.
talk to one another.
Yeah.
I think it would work. You know.
Well,
Well,
Valley Pines has 8,000 square feet of unused space, plenty indoor area. It's free.
All right. You want to store a little trailer in there?
Sure.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, y'all.
Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.